You're up there, man, honestly. Fuck.
Alright, today we're going to be talking about MHD and is it actually worth it on your BMW? Now, if you don't know, MHD is a tuning app you can buy from the Android store. It's free. All you have to pay for is a module to tune your car, and then whichever tune that suits the performance of your car. So for my car, it's a Stage 2 Plus. I've had an intercooler fitted, I've had downpipes fitted, I've had the back end straight piped. It's loud. I've had DCI, dual cone intake, put into the car. That's a very, very good place to start. About MHD is the fact that if you're going to tune your car, any car, regardless if it's an off-the-shelf tune or with anybody, you need to make sure your car's in optimum performance levels. I bought this car with high mileage. It needed a lot of work, obviously. I didn't know at the time, but obviously after that work, I've had issue after issue after issue, and installing MHD actually hasn't helped. You know, if you're going to up the PSI, if you're going to up the performance of your car, you're going to have to expect things to break if they're not how they should be. So that's the main issue I've had so far. It's not even down to MHD, it's actually down to choosing the car that's correct for you, that's actually in decent position. I think I got into this whole thing gun-ho. I got a high mileage car, obviously a lot of underlying issues I didn't know test driving it, or the guy who bought the car, because he's a trader, he traded it for a different car. He didn't know all these issues until it was actually driven, and all fair shout out to him. He bought me the water pump, so he didn't have to do that, and that was a lot of the expense at first. Another issue I want to talk about is actually getting a tune off the shelf. You don't actually really know what you're getting. You know, if you get it on a dyno and you get someone to actually do it face to face, you can see the starting place and you can see where it ends. Whereas this car's meant to be 306 brake standard. When I got the car, it definitely wasn't that. So I don't know where I'm starting at. And then to tune from there, you know, the figures I should be having here on this car is about 440 brake. Probably a bit more with actually all the extra stuff that I've done. But there's no way of really knowing what you've got unless you can dyno it. And at the minute, with everything that's going on, there's no dynos around, so there's no way of actually double checking. This car actually finally feels fast. I mean, I've had MHD installed on the car for about 6 weeks. At first, I think I got lost in the pops and the bangs and everything. And you know, when I actually stopped to think, I thought, the car actually doesn't feel that fast. I raced a friend back from work the other day in a Mercedes diesel, and yeah, diesels have torque, but he's got about 200 brake. I should have double his figures, and I was struggling to keep up with him. So that's the first thing I thought, something ain't quite right here. So I've got back onto my mechanic. He's done a service, he's replaced the solenoids again. That's another issue I need to talk about actually now, is there's a code 3100 that I've read from MHD, and I've looked it up, and it keeps coming up over and over and over again. Turbocharge problem, solenoid problem, Vanos, over and over and over again. And every time I take it to the mechanic, it takes a few more £100. We think we've sorted the problem, it comes back. So that's an issue. I didn't have that before. But obviously what I didn't expect is when you're up in the boost, you're up in the power, you have to expect things to go wrong. So that moves me on nicely to the next thing, is that if you're going to do a tune, you have to make sure you have the supporting mods. Now, going into this, looking at MHD, they do a stage 0 and a stage 1 tune. You're probably getting a sharper response and sharper performance, but you're not getting an extra 80 brake force, I can guarantee that. So for me, I don't do anything by halves. I just thought, you know what, if I'm going to do it, stage 2 plus, get the best results. So in terms of money and what it actually costs to get the best out of MHD, in my opinion, you 100% need a front mount intercooler. I went for a 7-inch step design, much improved on the OEM version. It's just so small, flimsy. This is solid metal, lot bigger design, a lot better cooling, and I've checked that through the MHD app, which is another plus. You can actually check all of these things, keep stats on your performance, you know, everything that you want to do, it logs everything. So I can actually see there's been a dramatic improvement with the intercooler. The second thing was dual cone intakes. Quite inexpensive actually, it's only about £55, so it's inexpensive. The only thing is the engine bay is a lot hotter than it was before, and I've noticed that. So that's going to affect performance anyway. The next thing was downpipes. Not expensive in itself because I bought a cheap pair. It's actually the fit in it which worked out quite expensive because it's not an easy job, especially on this model of car. There's so many things in the way. The subframe has to come down and off. It was a nightmare. So that was a massive expense, which really shouldn't have been. And my mechanic just cut off the back exhaust. I wanted to see what it would sound like, and if it was too loud I was going to put back in the back box. It was too loud, but the main problem was the actual where it was cut halfway down the car. I was driving that for about 2 or 3 days, is the vibrations. So actually when you finish the exhaust off, it's still loud, the vibrations have gone, and it is manageable. You know, driving at low RPM, it's a smooth sound, it's not too loud. Which is what I enjoyed. When you put your foot down, however, and you're really going for it and going through tunnels, my god, the noise is amazing. You will not be disappointed with the BURBLES. So easy to set up. There's no way you can be disappointed with it. Now, a lot of people will get this MHD app and it will all be about the BURBLES. And I'm telling you now, the BURBLES and the gunshots and the way you can set the range and set everything up, it's amazing. And it does sound really, really good. But I will stress, to get the best out of it, and I've done MHD before, I got the exhaust chopped and the downpipes out, and they were so muffled, you could barely hit us. It was barely noticeable. Actually getting the downpipes in and the back box removed, the noise is the complete opposite. You know, I drove past an old guy the other day, it blew out the back and the guy jumped like it was a gunshot. Like, the noise is loud, and that's what you're going to have to expect. It is loud. Okay, so another big factor is, if you're going to do a Stage 2 Plus like I have, stock this car should be about 8 PSI. After you've tuned it, they claim it's between 16 to 18 PSI, so you're almost doubling it. So this is one of the biggest issues I had, was I kept having misfires over and over and over again, going into limp mode and all these problems. Taking it to my mechanic, he had a look at it and he said, up in that PSI to that level, that boost pressure, it's probably blowing out the spark. So when we actually went for a test drive, that was the case. So we had to upgrade our spark plugs and he adjusted it. So if you actually think to yourself, the spark plug's here and this is the distance it needs to shoot, if there's more pressure going through, that's just going to keep blowing out the spark. So what you had to do is readjust that gap so that spark's not getting blown out. And you know, in the 6 weeks of having MHD, it's the first time I've put my foot down and I've been shocked. In fact, quite scared. I'm used to Audis, 4-wheel drive, no problems, do it all day long. This is a real wheel drive car. There's so much power, the back end just steps out. So, you know, after all this corona thing, it's going to be very interesting to get this on a dyno and actually see the output levels. You know, I've had rough estimates of about 450, 460, which is what I wanted to do from the start. The whole point of this was to get a cheap car for less than £5 grand, for the car, parts, everything all in, and try to get about a 500 brake horsepower car. And looking at it and feeling how this car feels, like, it feels like that, but it's come at a massive cost. So my original budget was about £5 grand. I think I've just about stayed underneath that £5 grand, only because my friend, who is the mechanic that's worked on this car, has done me a lot of cheap labour. He's not even charged me for a lot of the things. So, you know, like I said, a lot of expense was the water pump, which I didn't pay for, but fitting it cost money, not easy. Downpipes were inexpensive, but fitting it was not easy, that cost money. Intercooler is easy enough to do yourself. However, you have to expect, if you're getting an older car, things are going to be wrong. The screws are rounded. It was an absolute nightmare to get out, but it's a fairly straightforward job you can do yourself. cutting off the back box and installing pipes at the back actually wasn't that expensive. If you know somebody that can do it, you can even do it yourself and do it with clamps. You can buy the parts on eBay, cut it and clamp it. I didn't want to cut corners this time. I got my mechanic to do it. He did a really good job. I'm happy with it. But also that comes at a cost, and labour's not free. I can't expect to do everything for free. So the question I first asked was, can you get a £5,000 car and get about 500 brake out of it? The answer is categorically yes. It is possible. But if you want to get a decent car, probably not. If you actually want to get this model of car, I wouldn't advise to go over 100,000 because you don't know what the car's been through, you don't know how much it's been pushed, and that's something I've had to discover with this car. But yeah, if you get a decent enough car, it's fairly easy with a few bolt-on parts and MHD off the shelf, or even get a custom tune. And that is another benefit of MHD, is the fact you can get your tuner to actually tune your car, send you that, and you can add it to the MHD, and that could be added anytime that you want it to be through the app, which is another nice touch. So it's not to say you can't push the car further if you have your own tuner, but for an app, I have to say it's amazing. So today we're going to be going to see my friend. He's given me a lot of advice, a lot of help along the way with tuning this car. He is a Jack guy, so I want to get his first reaction in this car. I've talked through everything I've done to the car, I've talked through the MHD, I've talked through costs. So yeah, let's get this on the way. We should get some nice shots today as well. For those of you that don't know on the channel, this is my guy Warner, giving me a lot of help on this car, a lot of advice and stuff. So this is the reaction video. I've not even driven this car properly yet. I want to get the reaction of both of us. So I've tuned this car with this MHD app, which you can get on Android phones, yeah? But there's no real way of gauging what it's actually saying I'm meant to be having. So it says it reckons about 440 brake. And then with all the other stuff that I've done, we're looking about 460, 470.
Okay.
But where should I go? Right? Yeah, let me go right quickly. Does it feel to you like a 400 plus brake car?
Given the weight of the vehicle, it's not like it's still got everything in it. It's not a stripped back. It's quite still like a sleeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's up there somewhere. Definitely. Quick, man.
It's like I was
auto as well, isn't
yeah.
it? So it's like,
and I've not even put in sport.
Yeah,
that's what I should do, really.
I was going to say that is a junction. Remember, that's a bit more, isn't it? It's much more aggressive. Yeah, see, it's tearing the fucking tarmac up, mate. That's you're up there, man. Honestly,
fuck.
You were spinning the whole way through that.
I just can't get traction.
Even just newer tyres, you got probably a road tyre on there.
Yeah, I've got a Continental, but
it is a Continental.
It is. It's not great.
But you want a good quality set of sticky tyres on there, really. And obviously it's fucking fast. Yeah, I'd say you want you don't want a race tyre, but you don't want just a normal road tyre. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want something in the middle that's nice and
easy.
Yeah, like. able to go on a racetrack, but
Good on the road.
good on the road still, and obviously affordable.
Yeah.
They get silly money.
This is true.
Silly money.